What if your thoughts weren't private? What if fear, rage, hope, or grief could ignite something inside you? Something powerful, something dangerous, something waiting for the right moment to break through your skin and rewrite reality. Humanity did not plan to become a psychic species. It stumbled into that future blind, terrified, and completely unprepared. Long before the Imperium, long before Terra forged its first empire, long before any human understood the word warp, there were whispers, cracks in reality, flickers of impossible perception in the minds of primitive people who should not have known anything beyond fire, hunger, and the cold. Those early Psykers were not called Psykers. They were called prophets, shamans, cursed ones, blessed ones, monsters, visionaries. Depending on the tribe, they were either revered or killed. Some could sense storms before they formed. Others spoke in voices not their own. A few brought healing or death with a touch. But none understood what they were tapping into. They didn't know the warp existed. They didn't know their powers came from a dimension of emotion, chaos, and predatory entities hungry for their souls. What they did know instinctively was that their abilities came with a cost. Imagine a prehistoric shaman waking from a vision with frostbite on their fingers and eyes that no longer saw the natural world correctly. Imagine a tribal elder whose nightmares burned the grass around their sleeping place. Primitive humans tried to make sense of such phenomena the only way they could, with superstition, rituals, fear, worship. But nothing could explain why some children simply died after their first terrifying visions, or why some vanished without a trace, as if something had reached through the veil and dragged them away. The pattern continued for millennia. A psychic spark here, a catastrophic mind burn there, a child who could sense danger, a wanderer who collapsed into madness after staring too long into nothing. But these were rare incidents, anomalies. Humanity didn't yet realize an evolution had begun. And then, according to the oldest and most forbidden myths, something extraordinary happened. A gathering of shamans, thousands of them, the greatest psychic minds of ancient Earth, burdened by a terrifying truth. Every time a shaman died, something in the warp noticed, something hunted, something learned their taste. The shamans knew they were being targeted by predators that existed beyond reality's curtain. So they did the unthinkable. They united. They embraced death willingly, not one by one, but together. The myth claims that these ancient Psykers suicided in a massive, synchronized ritual, their souls merging into a single immortal consciousness, a consciousness powerful enough to reincarnate, to avoid warp predators, to remember every life, every lesson, every tragedy. That consciousness would walk the world for thousands of years in countless forms, shaping humanity slowly until it was finally reborn into one final body. A body we now call the Emperor. Whether this myth is truth or allegory, nobody knows. But one thing is certain. By the end of M22, Psykers were no longer rare. Humanity had changed. Warp sensitivity began appearing across the species at an alarming rate. At first, it seemed almost benign, enhanced instinct, intuition, flashes of insight. But as humanity spread across the stars during the dark age of technology, Psyker births increased exponentially. People found themselves capable of feats that resembled magic. Telepathic communication, levitation, bursts of raw energy. and starships, faster-than-light vessels using the warp's tides, began relying on human minds to navigate. Psychics became guides, advisors, problem solvers. In the age of technology, Psykers were as close to scientific miracles as humanity had ever known. But progress always hides danger. As the number of Psykers increased, so did warp instability. Human emotion, magnified by psychic potential, attracted entities from the warp. Some Psykers opened their minds too far, too quickly, becoming gateways for forces far beyond their comprehension. Some burned out instantly, some went mad, some never manifested psychic power at all, but instead generated faint warp disturbances that were enough to destabilize entire settlements. Humanity had gained power without the wisdom to use it. The collapse came in waves. First, isolated incidents of mass hysteria, then sudden psychic storms, then whole cities falling silent after a child's uncontrolled awakening tore the veil open. The warp had noticed humanity, and the warp wanted more. By the time the Age of Strife began, Psykers weren't a curiosity, they were a threat. Uncontrolled, untrained, unpredictable. Some cultures worshipped them as gods. Others executed them to prevent catastrophe. Entire planets descended into anarchy because a single Psyker lost control of their abilities. The warp's predators, the entities we now call demons, found easy prey in frightened Psykers whose minds cracked under pressure. The galaxy became a graveyard of worlds destroyed by psychic backlash. Yet even in this chaos, evolution marched on. Psykers became more common, powers more intense, mutations more frequent. Humanity's psychic potential wasn't receding, it was accelerating. It was as if the species itself was transforming, reaching toward something greater, something catastrophic. And then, something changed. A mysterious figure emerged on Terra during humanity's darkest age, gathering warlords, uniting tribes, conquering nations, bringing order with impossible precision. People whispered about his presence, about the way he could anticipate danger, understand languages instantly, calm riots with a gesture, and unleash terrifying force when needed. His power felt ancient. His knowledge felt infinite. The Emperor did not announce himself as a Psyker. He didn't need to. Everyone who met him understood. He was the culmination of humanity's psychic evolution. The apex, the prototype, the final design. Under his guidance, Psykers were no longer anomalies. They were tools, instruments of unity, weapons of order. But even he understood the dangers they posed, because he knew the warp better than anyone alive. And so, the Great Crusade began not just to reunite humanity, but to control its evolution, to shepherd Psykers, to prevent disaster, to prepare humanity for a future where psychic power would be unavoidable. Because the truth was undeniable. Humanity was becoming a psychic species. The warp would not leave it alone. And every new generation produced more Psykers than the last. This was not luck. This was not accident. This was evolution, violent, unpredictable, unstoppable evolution. Today, in the 41st millennium, Psykers are everywhere. Some barely understand their own abilities. Some suppress them out of fear. Some embrace them and fall into ruin. A few survive the gauntlet of Imperial control and become indispensable to the Imperium's survival. But the core question that haunted ancient shamans still echoes. Is psychic power the path to humanity's destiny, or the door to its extinction? The Imperium fears both answers. And in the next chapter, we confront the force that makes Psykers possible and threatens to consume them, the warp itself. Before dive in Chapter 2, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more updates. Now let's dive straight into Chapter 2. Chapter 2, The Warp's Price. Why Psykers are feared across the galaxy. Imagine standing alone in a dark room and realizing the darkness is staring back at you. Now imagine that darkness is alive, hungry, and whispering your name. That is what it means to be a Psyker in the Warhammer universe. Every Psyker, no matter how powerful or disciplined, lives one heartbeat away from being swallowed by the very energy they wield. Because psychic power is not magic, not mutation, not a talent. It is a negotiation with a dimension that hates you simply for existing. A dimension that watches every flicker of fear, every moment of loneliness, every spark of anger, and grows stronger from it. The warp is not a place. It is emotion given form. It is chaos shaped into storms and currents. It is the endless ocean beneath the skin of reality. When a Psyker reaches into that ocean, the ocean reaches back. Sometimes gently, sometimes violently, sometimes with a patience so malicious it feels like love twisted inside out. To understand why Psykers terrify civilizations, you have to understand what the warp actually is. It is often described as a reflection of consciousness, but that description is too comforting. It is more like a mirror built out of teeth. Every fear becomes a ripple. Every violent thought becomes a current. Every act of hatred becomes a tidal wave. The warp feeds on emotion, and Psykers become beacons. Their minds bright, tempting, vulnerable. Most beings across the galaxy feel only faint background noise from the warp. They don't hear the whispers. They don't sense the tides. They don't see the flickers of entities pressing hungrily against the veil. But a Psyker is a spotlight, a fragrance, a scent trail that stretches across dimensions, and predators follow. This is why every species reacts differently to Psykers. Some embrace them, some weaponize them, some fear them, and some seek to eradicate them entirely. The Eldar once believed they had mastered psychic power. Their souls burned brightly, their emotions were vast, and their abilities were unmatched. They danced through the warp as if it were an extension of their own consciousness. But their passion, their boundless, unchecked obsession with sensation, tore a hole in reality. A psychic wound so vast it birthed Slaanesh, the prince of excess. Overnight, an entire civilization collapsed into agony. Billion upon billion died, their souls devoured in a single breath. The survivors fled into craft worlds or into the webway, forever haunted by the knowledge that they had destroyed themselves with their own psychic excess. Their tragedy became a warning to the entire galaxy. No one truly controls the warp. The warp always takes its price. The orcs, on the other hand, treat psychic energy as casually as breathing. They don't understand the warp intellectually. They brute force it through collective belief. Their whack, isn't magic, it's a psychic pressure wave created by millions of orcs thinking the same dumb, violent thoughts at the same time. Their Psykers, the weird boys, are living lightning rods. They channel raw whack energy until their skulls crack open or they explode in a shockwave of gore and green psychic fire. And yet, it works. The orcs thrive because they treat their psychic insanity as a normal part of life. Meanwhile, the Tyranids use a different system entirely, the hive mind. A psychic network so vast it crushes other Psykers under its signal. A shadow in the warp that suffocates thought, clouds judgment, and makes psychic communication nearly impossible. The Tyranids don't bargain with the warp. They drown it in their presence, pushing their own psychic term into reality like a boot against a throat. Then there are the Necrons and the Tan. To them, Psykers are an abomination. The Necrons remember a time before the warp's corruption seeped into all living things. Their soulless metal bodies make them immune to psychic manipulation, and their technology is designed to neutralize or annihilate Psykers instantly. They don't fear psychic power, they despise it. The Tan, those star-eating god machines, treat Psykers as irrelevant insects. Their hatred of the warp stems from the fact that they cannot control it or consume it. They represent cold, physical power. The warp represents emotional, immaterial power. The two are natural enemies. Across the galaxy, reactions differ, but everywhere there is one constant. Psykers come with risk. And not theoretical risk, catastrophic risk. Because the warp is not content to be used. It is not passive. It is not a harmless reservoir of power. Pushes back. Tests Psykers constantly. A momentary lapse in concentration can open a crack in reality. A moment of panic can summon a predator. A moment of sorrow can manifest a creature wearing the face of someone you miss. The warp does not care about your intentions. It cares about your emotions. And Psykers feel emotion deeply because their minds vibrate with the intensity of their own power. And when a Psyker loses control, the consequences can be immediate, grotesque, and fatal. There are documented cases of young Psykers spontaneously combusting. Some have released telepathic screams that crippled entire cities. Others have suffered mental fractures that opened microportals, letting demon spores slip into reality. There are horror stories, quiet, unspoken stories, of Psykers waking up to find everyone around them dead. Their bodies twisted in impossible ways, their faces frozen in silent terror. The Psyker doesn't remember what happened. The warp does. This is why the Imperium fears Psykers more than it fears aliens, heretics, or traitors. You can reason with an enemy. You can shoot an invader. But you cannot negotiate with the warp. You cannot bribe it. You cannot intimidate it. Psykers are both humanity's greatest evolutionary leap and its worst existential liability. The Imperium understands this duality with brutal clarity. It knows Psykers are necessary, essential for communication, navigation, warfare, bureaucracy, survival. Astropaths keep the galaxy connected. Navigators make warp travel possible. Battle Psykers turn hopeless fights into victories. Yet every one of them is a potential disaster waiting to erupt in the middle of a city, a ship, a regiment. This is why Psykers must be controlled with absolute, unrelenting force. This is why the Imperium chains them, collars them, tests them, interrogates them, and ultimately forces them to live under constant scrutiny. Because humanity is evolving too fast. Because too many Psykers are born each year. Because the warp is growing louder, more chaotic, more vicious. Because the Great Rift didn't just split the galaxy, it multiplied psychic sensitivity across entire populations. Even the strongest Psykers tremble now, feeling the warp storms tearing through reality like claws raking across the veil. This chapter ends with an unavoidable truth. Psykers are not feared because they are different. They are feared because they are powerful. And power in the warp is a conversation with something that never stops whispering back. In the next chapter, we enter the Imperium's most chilling institution, the Black Ships, and see how humanity responds to the nightmare of psychic birth. Chapter 3, The Imperial Nightmare. How the Imperium controls Psykers through terror. Picture a child waking in the middle of the night, not because of a nightmare, but because the nightmare is bleeding through reality and staring back at them. Now imagine millions of those children spread across a crumbling galaxy. What does an empire do when its own citizens become gateways to the unknown? The Imperium answered that question with fear, chains, and fire. The Imperium of man does not deal in subtlety. It does not negotiate with risk. It does not tolerate uncertainty. When Psykers began appearing in large numbers, each one a potential disaster wrapped in fragile flesh, the Imperium responded with the only language it truly understands: overwhelming, heavy-handed control. That control begins with the Black Ships. There are many horrors in the galaxy, but few match the dread inspired by a black ship's silhouette drifting into orbit. The moment one appears, entire worlds fall into quiet panic. Children are hidden, parents pray, administrators scramble to produce their Psyker registries, because everyone knows what the arrival means. The harvest has begun. The Adeptus Astra Telepathica, an institution older than some imperial planets, operates these ships as grim collectors of psychic talent. But talent is not really the right word. The Imperium doesn't see potential, it sees risk mitigation. A Psyker is either a resource or a bomb, and both need to be contained. When the conscription edict is announced, Imperial Guard detachments sweep across cities, villages, and hive levels. Psykers are dragged from their homes, bound in chains etched with wards, and marched to processing stations. Some go quietly, terrified. Others scream, denying they have any abilities at all until their fear accidentally ignites psychic static in the air and proves their guilt on the spot. Families rarely resist. What can they do? If they hide their child and the Inquisition finds out, the entire household could be executed for harboring a potential warp breach. So people watch helplessly as their sons and daughters are taken away by uniformed officers who refuse even to speak their names. Once aboard a black ship, the nightmare truly begins. The journey is not a transport, it is a trial, a culling, a filtration process designed not to train Psykers but to sift through them, separating those who can endure the horrors of warp sensitivity from those who will break under their own power. Inside the ship, Psykers are kept shackled in sealed compartments, monitored constantly by servitors and telepathic overseers. Their chains are not symbolic. They are lined with alloys that dampen psychic resonance and runes that suppress thought patterns likely to draw warp predators. Despite this, the ship hums with psychic noise, frightened minds pushing against the edge of sanity, crying out into the void with emotions so strong they ripple through the interior corridors. Some Psykers lose control immediately. Their panic triggers flares of uncontrolled psychic discharge that must be contained by emergency squads. Others fall into catatonic silence, their minds overwhelmed by the sudden proximity of so many other frightened minds. Some simply die, bodies overwhelmed by the stress of warp static bleeding through the hull. The crew of a black ship does not intervene. They watch, they record, they perform the necessary purges. If a compartment begins to destabilize from psychic pressure, it can be vented into space without hesitation. One dangerous Psyker is a threat. 100 dangerous Psykers is a catastrophe waiting to explode through the hull. And this is where the darkest truth emerges. The majority of Psykers collected by the black ships will never see training. They will never become astropaths. They will never join the Scholastia Psychana. They will never serve the Imperium. They will die aboard the ship or upon arrival, because the Imperium uses Psykers as fuel. Literally, the Golden Throne, that colossal machine sustaining the Emperor's shattered body and allowing the Astronomicon to burn across the galaxy, requires psychic sacrifice. Not metaphorically, not spiritually, physically. Thousands of Psykers are fed into the throne every day, their souls consumed to keep the Emperor's beacon burning. To the Imperium, this is a sacred duty. To the Psykers, it is annihilation. When a black ship finally reaches Terra, the surviving Psykers are divided into categories. The weakest, the unstable, the untrainable, they go directly to the sacrifice chambers. Their deaths are quick, but not painless. Their final moments are spent being drained dry, their souls extinguished like candles. The strongest candidates are taken elsewhere. They are marched through the gates of the Scholastia Psychana, the Imperium's brutal training academy for those deemed valuable enough to live. And live is a generous word. Training begins with suppression. Students are taught to build mental walls, thick, heavy barriers to hold back the warp's whispers. Their days are filled with meditation drills, psychological shocks, and exposure to minor warp presence under strict supervision. Those who fail to block the noise are removed. Those who collapse under pressure are removed. Those who show signs of instability are removed. Removed rarely means reassigned. It usually means eliminated, because even one slip, even one moment of psychic loss of control can tear a hole in reality large enough to swallow a training cadre whole. Those who survive this stage undergo identity stripping. Their pasts, families, emotions, everything personal is severed through hypnoconditioning. The Imperium doesn't want Psykers with attachments. It wants Psykers who obey. And then come the real trials. Exposure to controlled warp phenomena. Soul-binding rituals performed by hooded choirs. Tests that measure willpower in conditions designed to break it. Many die here. Many lose their minds here. A few emerge changed but alive. Those few become sanctioned Psykers, tools of the Imperium. Some become astropaths, their eyes burned out in a ritual that binds their souls to the Emperor's radiance. Others become battlefield Psykers, embedded in guard regiments where commissars shadow them with drawn pistols. A tiny fraction become advisors to inquisitors, where they live under the constant threat of instant execution. But one truth remains consistent across every role. A sanctioned Psyker is never trusted. Not fully, not ever. They are watched constantly, God Emperor forbid they sneeze the wrong way. Someone might interpret it as a warp flare. The Imperium fears Psykers for good reason. It has seen what happens when they go wrong. It has seen worlds burn because a single, frightened adolescent unleashed a psychic scream that attracted something unspeakable. It has seen regiments slaughtered in seconds because a nascent Psyker had a panic attack at the worst moment imaginable. And so the Imperium controls its Psykers with iron discipline, religious zeal, and the ever-present threat of death. Not because it wants to be cruel, but because it cannot afford mercy. Humanity is becoming a psychic species. The warp is becoming louder, angrier, more chaotic. The Great Rift has torn the galaxy in half. And every year, more Psykers are born than the year before. If the Imperium fails to control them, it will die. If it controls them too harshly, it speeds its own decline. If it uses them freely, it risks tearing open the warp itself. If it suppresses them entirely, it loses the tools that keep it alive. This is the paradox of psychic power in the 41st millennium. The Imperium hates Psykers. The Imperium needs Psykers. The Imperium depends on Psykers. The Imperium destroys Psykers. And everything, the fear, the discipline, the sacrifice, begins with those silent, black-hulled ships drifting across the stars like floating funerals. In the next chapter, we follow the fraction who survive the impossible and learn what it takes to walk the galaxy as a sanctioned servant of the Imperium. Chapter 4: Sanctioning and Survival. The Psykers who live long enough to serve. Imagine surviving something designed to kill you, only to learn that your reward is a lifetime of danger, isolation, and suspicion. That is the fate of every Psyker who endures the black ships. By the time a Psyker reaches Terra or a major training world, they have already passed through more horror than most Imperial citizens experience in their entire lives. But the Imperium is unforgiving. Survival is not proof of strength. Survival merely qualifies you for the next trial. And what comes next is worse. Once processed and classified, the Psykers who demonstrate even the smallest measure of control are marched into institutions where the air tastes like burnt metal and incense, the Scholastia Psychana. This is not a school. This is not an academy. This is a crucible, a place where fragile Psyker minds are reforged into weapons the Imperium hopes will not explode in its hands. The first lesson every initiate learns is simple. Your mind is not your own. Your emotions are not your own. Your soul is not your own. From the moment they enter the training halls, Psykers are stripped of everything that might weaken their discipline. Names are replaced with identification sigils. Histories are erased from their official files. Personal attachments are severed, sometimes gently through indoctrination, sometimes violently through forced forgetting. The Imperium believes a Psyker with a past is a Psyker with vulnerability, and vulnerability is the warp's favorite doorway. The training itself is brutal. It begins with meditation drills inside shielded chambers, where Psykers must quiet their minds amidst background warp pressure strong enough to crack glass. Monitors observe them constantly, watching for tremors, uncontrolled sparks, or mind flares. Any sudden spike in psychic resonance triggers alarms and invites immediate suppression by warded servitors. Failure is not forgiven. Failure is removed. The instructors, robed in austere garments lined with sigils, begin reshaping their students psychologically. Some use calm, measured speech to guide them. Others employ intimidation, deprivation, or controlled psychic stress. The methods vary, but the purpose remains the same. Harden the will, sharpen the focus, build walls inside the mind strong enough to withstand warp hunger. Those walls become a Psyker's only defense. During early sessions, many initiates learn a grim truth. Controlling psychic power is not about willingness or talent. It is about constantly fighting a reality that wants to swallow you whole. Thought becomes dangerous. Emotion becomes volatile. Dreams become potential breaches. Something as simple as loneliness can invite warp attention if the mind slips too far into despair. And yet these young Psykers must push forward, because the alternative is death. Once they establish basic control, they move to the next stage: discipline immersion. Psykers are introduced to the structured paths sanctioned by the Imperium: biomancy, telekinesis, divination, pyromancy, telepathy. They do not choose these disciplines the way a scholar chooses a field of study. Instead, their abilities are measured, stress-tested, and mapped like volatile weapon signatures. If a Psyker shows aptitude for telekinesis, instructors isolate that spark and force it to grow under controlled escalation. If they show telepathic potential, they must endure deep mind drills that leave them shaking, bleeding, or unconscious. Those with the gift of fire learn to conjure flames while surrounded by suppression fields. Those destined for divination stare into psychoreactive pools that show things no human should ever see, leaving them trembling long after the visions fade. Every lesson is a fight against madness. Every breakthrough is achieved by stepping closer to the edge. But this is only the beginning. The true ordeal is the rite of sanctioning. The rite is not discussed openly. It is not something Psykers speak of afterward. It is equal parts ceremony, torture, and soul binding. A ritual performed by choirs of trained telepaths who channel the Emperor's distant radiance into a single mind. During the rite, a Psyker is stripped bare metaphysically. Every flaw, every crack, every unshielded thought becomes visible to the Emperor's psychic beacon. Many Psykers cannot withstand it. Their minds collapse like glass under a hammer. Their bodies seize. Their souls rupture and are consumed in bursts of raw warp hunger. Their remains are handled with clinical finality. Those who survive come out changed. Their eyes seem calmer, heavier, as though something ancient stares through them. Their minds feel reinforced, not invulnerable, never invulnerable, but sturdier. These Psykers are now marked, soul-branded with oaths and bindings that tether their power to the Imperium's will. And from here, their destinies branch. The most stable and disciplined become astropaths, blind telepaths serving as the Imperium's psychic communication backbone. The soul-binding ritual burns their physical eyes away, but replaces their vision with something more profound: the ability to sense transmissions across the warp. A single astropath can connect fleets separated by light years, guiding entire sectors through the dark. But being an astropath is a life of constant strain. They stand on the edge of reality every day, transmitting messages with their minds stretched thin across impossible distances. Many die young. Some fade mentally, their consciousness worn raw by decades of exposure to warp currents. Yet they are honored, even revered, because without them, the Imperium collapses into silence. Other Psykers become sanctioned battlefield assets. These men and women are injected into the Astra Militarum, serving as Primaris Psykers or Wordvane Psykers. Their presence terrifies their own regiments. Soldiers avoid making eye contact. Officers keep distance. Commissars, grim-faced executioners, stand nearby, bolt pistols always ready. For in the chaos of battle, Psykers walk a hair's breadth from disaster. One miscast, one panic surge, one warp echo, and an entire platoon can die instantly. And yet, battlefield Psykers are indispensable. They shield infantry from incoming spells. They unleash blasts of kinetic force that tear enemy armor apart. They peer into the minds of commanders or glimpse threats beyond mortal sight. Their power is terrifying and desperately needed. A rare few Psykers, the most gifted and stable, rise to elite service. Some become advisors to planetary governors, interpreting omens or sensing disturbances before they escalate. Some join the Inquisition, where they serve as living instruments of detection and interrogation. These Psykers live in shadow, walking among the most dangerous secrets of the Imperium, knowing they are one mistake away from execution. And then there are those who are offered the rarest path of all, integration into the Adeptus Astartes. Space Marine librarians are Psykers taken to the absolute limit. Their minds must endure both the Astartes transformation and the psychic rigor demanded by the Librarius. They are warriors of body and soul, fighting demons while cutting down foes with psychic lightning or telekinetic force. But even they are not immune. Many librarians die young, consumed by the warp's pressure or torn apart by entities seeking to infiltrate their minds. Every Psyker who survives sanctioning, everyone who earns the right to serve, understands a chilling truth. Their life is not their own. Their choices are not their own. Their fate is tethered to a power that constantly tests their will. They walk among humanity as both tools and threats, respected but feared, essential but disposable. Their every breath is watched. Their every thought is monitored. Their loyalty is measured not in devotion but in self-control. Because even after sanctioning, even after soul binding, even after years of training, one fact never changes. A Psyker is always one heartbeat away from catastrophe. And in the next chapter, we see how this uneasy dependence shapes the Imperium's wars, and why Psykers, despite all the risk, are thrown into battle again and again. Chapter 5: The Battle Minds, Psykers in Imperial Warfare. Imagine walking onto a battlefield knowing that the most dangerous enemy might not be across the field, but standing right beside you. In the Imperium, Psykers are both shields and potential disasters. They are saviors and liabilities, champions and time bombs wrapped in blue lightning. Their presence on the front lines is never comfortable, never simple, and never without risk. Yet without them, the Imperium's armies fight half-blind, half-deaf, and hopelessly outmatched against enemies who wield psychic horrors with far fewer restrictions. This contradiction, needing what you fear, defines the Imperium's relationship with Psykers in war. When a Psyker enters a battlefield, the air changes. Veterans feel it first. A pressure in the skull, a storm building behind their thoughts, an instinctive tightening in the gut like something nearby is wrong in a way they can't articulate. Animals sense it too. Mounts buck, cybermastiffs growl, servoskulls glitch. Every living thing feels the warp creeping through the cracks of reality the moment a Psyker opens their mind. To commanders, Psykers are strategic assets. To soldiers, Psykers are omens. To commissars, Psykers are stress tests waiting to detonate. But regardless of the fear they inspire, Psykers are deployed because the Imperium has no choice. Its enemies break minds as easily as bodies. Eldar warlocks can distort probability mid-battle. Orc weird boys can trigger spontaneous explosions just by existing in a crowd. Tyrannid synapse creatures twist the battlefield with psychic command. Demons turn courage into illusion and illusion into death. If humanity sends out armies without Psykers, it fights blind against the unseen. That is why sanctioned Psykers march with Imperial Guard regiments across thousands of war zones. Their powers vary, their personalities vary, but they share one tragic reality. They must use their abilities to save soldiers who instinctively shrink away from them. In a typical regiment, Psykers hold several roles. Some are assigned as wordvane squads, clusters of low-tier Psykers who combine their powers under discipline, acting like psychic batteries. Together, they can throw barriers, sense incoming threats, or lash out with bursts of force. Individually, they're unstable. Together, they're marginally controllable. But the most feared and most valued battlefield Psykers are the Primaris Psykers. These individuals walk into war with minds reinforced through sanctioning, will strong enough to punch through warp static, and powers potent enough to change the course of a battle within seconds. A Primaris Psyker can fling armored vehicles off the ground, incinerate enemy squads with searing energy, twist bullets midair, cloud mines and sow confusion, ignite the sky with psychic fire, or collapse to their knees in agony when the warp pushes back. Power and fragility exist in the same moment. That duality shapes every battle they fight. When a Primaris Psyker opens their mind, nearby soldiers instinctively step away. They've heard stories, too many stories, of Psykers who lost control under stress. A sudden surge of fear, and the Psyker's shield misfires, frying friendly troops. A momentary lapse in concentration, and a demon slips through. A mental overextension, and the Psyker's skull bursts into flame from inside out. Every guardsman has witnessed something like this at least once. This is why a commissar is never far. The commissar's job is not to inspire Psykers. It is to terminate them instantly if corruption appears. The bolt pistol is never holstered at ease. It is drawn, ready, aimed in silent threat. And the Psyker knows it. This strange three-way tension, Psyker, soldiers, commissar, creates a psychological pressure cooker in every Imperial regiment. The Psyker must fight while knowing every ally is afraid of them, every superior is watching them, and every mistake might trigger an execution. And yet they step forward, because their power is needed. Picture a war zone on a mud-choked battlefield where guardsmen huddle in trench lines as tyrannid spores rain from a sky turned green with bioplasma. A Psyker stands at the center of a command post, sweat dripping down their brow as they reach into the warp. Their voice trembles as they recite litanies drilled deep into their mind. Their hands shake from the strain of channeling more energy than flesh can safely conduct. The ground trembles with psychic backlash. Then, a burst of unseen force sweeps out, toppling a wave of charging gaunts and giving the regiment 10 precious seconds to regroup. That moment buys thousands of lives. That moment prevents a breakthrough. That moment keeps the line from collapsing. This is the life of a battlefield Psyker. Save everyone or accidentally doom them. It's not only the Imperial Guard that relies on psychic might. Across the Adeptus Astartes, Space Marine librarians wield powers far greater than mortal Psykers. Their minds, backed by Lyman's nodes and gene seed modifications, provide stronger resistance to warp corruption. But they are not immune. Every librarian knows that the moment they slip, their fall will be catastrophic. A librarian can turn an entire battle by themselves. They can shield squads from psychic attacks that would otherwise flay minds open. They can disrupt demonic incursions before they manifest. They can burn heretics to ash with bolts of psychic lightning or rip weapons from enemy hands with invisible force. But with great power comes great peril. When a librarian channels too deeply, their brothers feel the world shift. The warp presses against the edges of reality like a predator testing a cage. Armor groans, air distorts, voices whisper against the helmets of nearby Marines. Some librarians die from the sheer pressure of the warp pushing back, their hearts bursting or their brains liquefying under psychic overload. Others survive, but at a cost. Some develop tremors. Others whisper in their sleep. A few grow quiet, haunted by things they glimpsed during battle. Even the strongest warriors feel the toll of wielding power that was never meant for mortal hands. And yet, the Adeptus Astartes cannot abandon their librarians. For every Black Legion sorcerer, every Eldar farcer, every Orc weird boy, every Chaos Psyker hurling warp fire, there must be a loyalist Psyker to counter them. War in the 41st millennium is not just fought with guns and steel. It is fought with minds. Psychic warfare is everywhere. A Chaos Sorcerer can corrupt a regiment with a whisper. A Tyrannid Synapse creature can enslave an entire battlefield. An Eldar Farcer can twist fate itself, making bullets miss, minds fail, or warriors stumble into their own deaths. Even the Tau, weak in the warp, deploy technology built specifically to counter psychic attacks. Proof that even those without Psykers fear psychic force. In this environment, Psykers are not luxuries. They are necessities. But necessity does not erase fear. On the battlefields of the Imperium, Psykers live under constant scrutiny not just from their commanders, but from the warp itself. Every time they channel power, they risk drawing attention. Every time they unleash force, they risk letting something in. Every time they push past their limits, they risk implosion, possession, or worse. And the soldiers who serve alongside them, they live with the knowledge that the ally who saved their life 5 minutes ago might accidentally vaporize them if their concentration breaks. This is why the Imperium treats Psykers as both saints and sinners in the same breath. They are indispensable tools. They are existential threats. They are assets with expiration dates. Their value is undeniable. Their danger is inescapable. And as the galaxy falls deeper into chaos, as the warp grows more turbulent, and as the Great Rift tears reality in half, the Imperium's reliance on Psykers has reached a breaking point. In the next chapter, we explore the darkest side of psychic evolution, the Psykers who fall, the ones who lose control, and the ones whose awakening becomes a weapon against humanity itself. Chapter 6, Chaos, Corruption, and the Ones Who Fall. What if the greatest danger to humanity isn't the Psyker who explodes in panic, but the one who starts whispering to something that whispers back? That quiet moment, unnoticed, unrecorded, untreated, is where corruption begins. Not with fire, not with screams, but with consent. The warp is patient. It does not need to storm a fortress when a single crack in the foundation will eventually swallow it whole. And Psykers, by their very nature, are covered in cracks, vulnerabilities shaped by fear, loneliness, trauma, and the unbearable pressure of being a living antenna for forces older than time. This is why chaos doesn't hunt Psykers violently. It seduces them. Corruption rarely begins on the battlefield. It begins in isolation. Imagine a Psyker stationed on a remote outpost, nights spent alone with the low-frequency hum of the warp pressing against the walls. They meditate, they pray, they fight back the whispers, but eventually, sleep becomes a battleground. The mind drifts too far. A thought resonates too deeply. A whisper slips in. It always starts subtly. A comforting voice during fear. A guiding hand during confusion. A promise of understanding when no one else listens. Chaos never introduces itself honestly. Speaks like a friend, like a memory, like the part of the Psyker that's tired of being watched, judged, restrained, and threatened with execution for simply being alive. This is the tragedy of corruption. Most Psykers don't fall because they crave power. They fall because they crave relief. And relief is the first gift chaos offers. For some, the path to corruption is slow, a drip feed of influence that grows with each moment of weakness. For others, it is sudden, violent, overwhelming. A traumatic event cracks their mind wide open, and the warp pours in like a flood through a shattered dam. But the warp always offers the same bargain. Let me help you. Let me guide you. Let me show you what you could become. And many Psykers say yes. The moment they do, everything changes. The first symptom is always emotional distortion. A Psyker's anger grows sharper, their fear more intense, their desires more vivid. The warp feeds on emotion, amplifying it, pushing the Psyker further toward instability. Soon after, physical effects manifest. Flickers of unnatural light around their eyes. Shadows bending toward them like eager pets. Voices slipping into their speech that are not entirely their own. A psychic residue that tastes like metal, ash, or cold ozone. At this stage, some Psykers still believe they are in control. But it's already too late. Once the warp has a foothold, it begins shaping the Psyker's abilities. Their powers intensify rapidly, too rapidly. Bolts of lightning become blasts of raw warp fire. Telepathy becomes invasive mind-ripping. Telekinesis becomes violent, unpredictable force. Divination becomes hallucination, then prophecy, then madness. The Imperium knows these symptoms all too well. They recognize the signs early. But reacting early doesn't guarantee survival, because a corrupted Psyker is a paradox. Fragile mind, catastrophic potential. A single lapse can unleash terrors that no regiment is prepared for. A corrupted Psyker might open micro-rifts, letting shrieking warp wraiths spill into reality. They might manifest illusions so convincing that an entire command squad turns their guns on each other. They might lose control of their own body as a demon puppeteers them like a marionette made of bone and screams. And sometimes, the Psyker doesn't lose control at all. Sometimes they give control away willingly. These are the most dangerous of all, the ones who believe chaos is a teacher rather than a predator. They cloak their growing madness behind discipline. They hide their corruption under loyalty. They learn to control the whispers long enough to infiltrate deeper into Imperial ranks. These Psykers become cult leaders, sorcerers, infiltrators, assassins. They hide inside administrative offices, starships, regiments, even ecclesiarchy shrines. When they finally reveal themselves, the explosion is political, military, and psychic all at once. Across the galaxy, many infamous chaos uprisings began with one Psyker who hid their corruption long enough to grow a following. They convinced others that the warp offered hope, not horror. They promised freedom from Imperial oppression. And when they finally unleashed their power, entire cities burned in psychic wildfire. Chaos sorcerers take this corruption even further. These are Psykers who not only fell, they embraced their fall. They learned to shape warp energy into weapons, summoning storms that melt armor, fire that screams, shadows that devour. They command demonic entities as familiars, letting warp creatures coil around them like serpents of thought and flame. Some sorcerers live for centuries, sustained by the gods they serve. Their bodies twist grotesquely, reshaped by constant exposure to warp energy. Their minds fracture into labyrinths of shifting personalities. Their voices echo like multiple beings speaking at once. But not all corrupted Psykers are sorcerers. Some become something far more pitiful and far more disturbing. There are Psykers whose corruption doesn't empower them, it infects them. They become walking conduits for demonic influence, not masters but puppets. Their bodies warp unpredictably. Their minds flicker in and out of lucidity. They mutter to themselves constantly, arguing with voices no one else hears. These Psykers wander into battlefields without purpose, magnetized toward warp disturbances. They drift toward war zones like moths to flame, drawn by the psychic energy of slaughter. Each step leaves behind ripples of distortion. Insects dying instantly, metal rusting in seconds, machines glitching into silence. The Imperium calls them warp-touched. Chaos calls them seeds. Both sides understand they are tragedies. The ultimate fate for corrupted Psykers depends on who finds them first. If the Imperium discovers them early, they are executed immediately, quietly, efficiently, without ceremony. Everyone understands the necessity. Everyone hates it. If the Inquisition finds them, they are interrogated, dissected mentally and physically, their memories harvested like painful data. Their death is clinical but not quick. If the chaos finds them, they are reshaped. They might become sorcerers. They might become possessed. They might become living portals. They might simply dissolve into shrieking warp energy. And then, there are the Psykers who fall during moments of catastrophic psychic failure. These incidents are rare but devastating. A Psyker might push their abilities too far, channel too much force, and their mind cracks open like shattering glass. Reality twists violently around them. Time distorts, gravity spasms. The Psyker screams as their body unravels into a storm of impossible geometry. Some vanish entirely, sucked into the warp with a snap like a breaking bone. The aftermath of such an event is always the same. A crater carved into the earth, metal fused to stone, silence heavy with the scent of ozone, and soldiers staring in horror at the spot where their comrades stood seconds earlier. These tragedies leave deep scars on Imperial forces. Not just physical scars, psychological ones. Because every soldier knows the truth. Psykers are not corrupted by chaos because they are weak. They are corrupted because they are exposed. They stand closest to the edge of reality. They fight battles no one else can see. They hear voices no one else can hear. They feel pressure no one else can withstand. And they walk through the galaxy knowing that every moment of doubt, every surge of emotion, every nightmare could become the doorway that ends them. The Imperium fears Psykers because they fall so easily. Chaos loves Psykers because they fall so beautifully. And Psykers fall because the human mind was never meant to channel the raw storms of the warp. In the next chapter, we explore the final tragedy, why humanity cannot survive without Psykers, yet cannot survive with them, and what the Emperor's long-hidden plan truly means for the fate of mankind. Before dive in Chapter 7, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more updates. Now, let's dive straight into Chapter 7. Chapter 7, The Burden of Power, How Other Civilizations Treat Psykers. What if humanity's struggle with Psykers isn't unique, but its fear is? Across the galaxy, countless civilizations wield psychic power. Some naturally, some brutally, some instinctively. And yet none of them treat their gifted individuals the way the Imperium does. No species reacts with such terror, such suspicion, such contradictory dependence. If you step outside the Imperium's borders and examine other cultures, a chilling pattern emerges. Everyone uses psychic power, but only humanity seems terrified of becoming what it is evolving into. This contrast reveals something disturbing, not about Psykers, but about us. To understand the weight of this burden, begin with the Eldar. The Eldar don't simply use psychic power. They are psychic power. Their very bodies hum with warp sensitivity. Their thoughts brush against the currents of unreality like a musician tuning a harp. Where humans see Psykers as anomalies, the Eldar see psychic talent as a birthright, an extension of their identity and culture. From childhood, Eldar learn to shape their thoughts with precision, clarity, and elegance. Their souls glow brightly in the warp, dangerously brightly, but their discipline is unmatched. Every Eldar citizen possesses some degree of psychic attunement, though only the most gifted become warlocks and farcers. Instead of fearing their potential, they refine it, elevate it, turn it into artistry. An Eldar farcer does not channel power. They conduct it, like a conductor directing a cosmic orchestra. But even this mastery carries a price. The Eldar's psychic brilliance birthed their greatest catastrophe, the fall, the creation of Slaanesh, the death of their empire. Their tragedy is the mirror opposite of humanity's. They flew too close to the sun, while humanity is too afraid to even walk outside. Yet even after the fall, they did not abandon psychic tradition. They doubled down, refining their discipline, mastering their fear. The Eldar show that psychic ability is not inherently a curse, but it becomes one without control. Then there are the Tau, perhaps the galaxy's strangest outliers. The Tau have almost no psychic presence. Their souls barely register in the warp. To most humans, this sounds like a blessing. To Psykers, it's unsettling. Being near a Tau feels like standing beside a person with no reflection, no echo, no spiritual weight. It's not evil. It's emptiness. Because of their limited warp signature, the Tau have no Psykers at all, and they fear the warp with a quiet, rational terror. They do not treat Psykers the way the Imperium does, because they have never had Psykers to treat. Their fear comes from observation, not history. They see demons. They see warp storms. They see what psychic power can unleash. And their solution is simple. Do not touch the warp. Do not invite it. Do not awaken what you cannot control. Unlike the Imperium, which fights its own nature, the Tau merely avoid it. But avoidance is not evolution. Avoidance is stagnation. Their empire is technologically brilliant, ethically complex, and militarily efficient, but spiritually hollow. They cannot travel the warp safely. They cannot communicate across stellar distances with psychic clarity. They cannot resist demonic corruption on their own. In many ways, their lack of psychic ability is not protection. It is a weakness disguised as safety. Now contrast both of these with the orcs. If the Eldar are psychic surgeons, the orcs are psychic brawlers. They don't meditate. They don't train. They don't even understand psychic power. They just are psychic, collectively, instinctively, chaotically. Orcs believe something works, and then it does, powered by the latent energy field generated by their species-wide consciousness. The whack. To an orc, psychic power is just another loud, fun part of life. To everyone else, it's a hazard. Orc weird boys are psychic conduits who unleash reality-warping energy simply by standing near enough orcs who are excited, angry, or ready to fight, which is always. Their powers are dangerous, explosive, unpredictable, but also incredibly effective. Orcs treat their Psykers with a bizarre mix of humor and practicality. They restrain them with copper rods, hit them on the head when they misbehave, and push them toward the enemy as walking artillery. There is no fear, no shame, no reverence, no control. Just raw psychic instinct weaponized by an entire species that treats danger like a hobby. Then come the Tyranids, the living ocean of biomass controlled by a synaptic, galaxy-spanning psychic network. The Tyranid hive mind is perhaps the purest expression of psychic dominance in existence. Every creature, from the smallest gaunt to the most towering tyrant, is plugged into a unified consciousness that guides every action with terrifying efficiency. Tyranid psychic power is not artistry like the Eldar. It is not curiosity like humanity. It is not chaos like the orcs. It is domination. When a Tyranid synapse creature awakens its psychic abilities, entire war zones tremble. They can silence communication, crush morale, and override biology. Their presence is so overwhelming that it drowns out psychic signals, blinding astropaths, crippling psychers, and muting even demonic whispers. In the Tyranid hive mind, individuality is irrelevant. Psychers are nodes in a vast machine. They do not fall. They do not break. They do not choose. They just obey. And then, on the opposite end of the spectrum entirely, stand the Necrons. To the Necrons, psychic power is not a gift or a danger. It is an abomination. They remember a time before the warp was filled with gods and monsters, before psychic energy became a living ecosystem of nightmares. Their hatred for Psykers is ancient, rooted in a war older than recorded history. Their technology disrupts psychic energy. Their warriors hunt Psykers with surgical efficiency. Their dynasties see psychic power as a flaw in the universe. A Necron does not fear Psykers. A Necron simply deletes them. Their cold, metallic existence is a rejection of everything the warp represents: emotion, desire, fear, dreams. In their eyes, Psykers are contamination, humanity is unstable, and the galaxy is sick with spiritual noise. So now the question becomes, where does humanity fit among these species? The Eldar embrace psychic power as destiny. The Orcs treat it as instinct. The Tyranids wield it as command. The Necrons exterminate it as corruption. The Tau avoid it like radiation. But humanity does something no other species does. Humanity fears its psychic evolution, but cannot escape it. Humanity needs Psykers, but destroys them. Humanity is changing, but refuses to accept the change. This creates a disturbing truth. Humanity may be the only race in the galaxy actively transforming into something new. Something not yet defined, not yet stable, not yet understood. A species on the edge of metamorphosis. The Eldar already evolved psychically. The Tyranids were born that way. The Orcs were engineered that way. The Necrons rejected it. The Tau lack it. But humanity is becoming something unpredictable, volatile, potentially world-shaping. And the galaxy fears what humans might become once the transformation is complete, because no other species evolves at the speed of crisis, pressure, and pain like humanity does. The Eldar whisper that humans may one day eclipse them in psychic potential. Chaos gods salivate at the endless new conduits for corruption. The Imperium resists the future while desperately relying on it. And other civilizations watch from afar, wondering whether mankind is rising or birthing the next catastrophe of cosmic scale. Human Psykers are not stable. Human Psykers are not predictable. Human Psykers are not finished. They are the beginning of something vast, something dangerous, something the galaxy has never seen before. In the next chapter, we delve into whether this evolution, this psychic metamorphosis, was part of the Emperor's grand design, or the greatest mistake in human history. Chapter 8, The Emperor's Design. Was Psyker evolution part of the plan? What if humanity's terrifying surge in psychic power isn't a mistake, but the first step in a blueprint older than the Imperium itself? For 10,000 years, the galaxy has debated the Emperor's intentions. Scholars whisper about it in forbidden vaults, inquisitors argue about it behind sealed doors, and Psykers themselves wonder whether their existence is an accident or a warning. Every crisis, every awakening, every uncontrolled Psyker birth raises a haunting possibility. Did the Emperor intend for humanity to become a psychic race? And if he did, why does the Imperium fear the very future he may have wanted? To answer that question, we must go back to the earliest eras of human history, long before Terra was united, long before the Primarchs, long before the First Legion took its oath. There are ancient myths, half-truths, fractal memories, psychic echoes, describing a time when humanity's shamans wielded immense power. They were reincarnating Psykers who shared knowledge across lifetimes, guiding early humans through threats beyond mortal comprehension. Some legends claim these shamans foresaw an age when their individual powers would no longer be enough. The warp was growing darker, angrier, alive with predators. Something had to change. So, they united spiritually, psychically, willingly, sacrificing their individual identities to create a single, immortal consciousness. The one we now call the Emperor. Whether this tale is literal or symbolic doesn't matter. What matters is that the earliest roots of the Emperor are undeniably psychic. His existence itself may be the culmination of ancient human evolution, not a break from it. This alone suggests the Emperor believed humanity's destiny lay in the warp. But destiny is a dangerous word. The Emperor understood something most humans still refuse to accept. Psychic evolution is inevitable. It is not a mutation. It is not a disease. It is not an accident. It is the next step for a species surrounded by psychic predators, warp entities, and enemies who wage war with thought as easily as with steel. But inevitable does not mean safe. The Emperor had seen what happened to species who awakened too quickly. The Eldar's empire collapsed under the weight of its own psychic excess. Their great civilization was so powerful, so emotionally unrestrained, that their collective desires birthed Slaanesh, a catastrophe that reshaped the galaxy. The Emperor feared humanity would suffer the same fate unless evolution was tightly controlled, guided, disciplined. So he created institutions designed not to suppress humanity's psychic potential, but to harness it safely. The black ships were not prisons. They were filters. The Scholastia Psychana wasn't punishment. It was a crash course in survival. The astropathic choir wasn't exploitation. It was infrastructure, humanity's first organized psychic network. Even the Golden Throne, as horrific as its requirements are, can be seen as stabilization rather than cruelty. The Emperor sits at the heart of the Imperium not as a ruler, but as a psychic anchor, a dam holding back the warp from flooding humanity before it can mature. Because psychic evolution does not happen cleanly. It happens violently, painfully, unpredictably, and the Emperor attempted to soften that transition. But then the Horus Heresy happened, and everything collapsed faster than he could adapt. The Emperor's grand design relied on a unified Imperium, a stable infrastructure, and a galaxy protected by the legions. The heresy shattered all three. It derailed a plan thousands of years in the making and replaced it with a desperate struggle for survival. The Emperor was forced onto the Golden Throne, unable to steer humanity's evolution, unable to correct its path, unable to ensure the transition happened slowly and safely. The question now becomes, was the Emperor's original plan ruined? Or is it simply unfolding differently than intended? Look at the evidence. Even with the Imperium fractured and half-blind, psychic awakenings continue. The Great Rift did not create Psykers, it merely accelerated a process already underway. The sheer number of Psykers being born suggests humanity is on the cusp of a monumental evolutionary shift. Some Inquisitors believe this is a sign of progress. Others believe it is the beginning of the end. But the most unsettling thought is this: maybe both are true. Some argue that the Emperor foresaw the Great Rift, that he knew the galaxy would tear open eventually. They believe he designed humanity's psychic infrastructure to endure even after his physical defeat. The Administratum, the Astra Telepathica, the Inquisition, even the sacrifices to the Golden Throne. Some radicals whisper that the throne is not merely sustaining the Emperor, but fueling a long-term psychic metamorphosis across the species. Perhaps every soul burned into the throne strengthens humanity's collective psychic presence. Perhaps the Emperor is guiding evolution silently from within the warp. Perhaps the Astronomicon is more than navigation. Perhaps it is a beacon shaping humanity's psychic awakening. If that is true, then Psykers aren't accidents. They are symptoms. They are milestones. They are proof the Emperor's design is still in motion. But what if the opposite is true? What if the Emperor never intended for humanity to evolve this quickly? What if the Great Rift accelerated evolution prematurely? What if uncontrolled Psyker births are a warning sign, a glitch in the plan? What if humanity is mutating faster than the Imperium can stabilize? There are inquisitorial factions who believe exactly this. They argue that the Emperor intended to shepherd psychic evolution gradually, through discipline and technology, not under the chaos and pressure of a broken galaxy. They fear humanity is awakening without guidance, without control, without protection, and that this path leads to another fall, another psychic catastrophe, another god being born in the warp. If humanity's emotions birthed Slainish, what would 10,000 years of fear, rage, despair, and fanaticism birth? This question terrifies the Imperium more than demons ever could. Another horrifying theory proposes that the Emperor didn't just anticipate the Great Rift, he tried to prevent it. That the Webway Project, the Golden Throne, and even the Primarchs were pieces of a grand architecture designed to protect humanity from a psychic explosion. When the heresy sabotaged these structures, humanity was left exposed, evolving rapidly without the safety mechanisms he intended. This would mean humanity's psychic awakening is not a controlled metamorphosis, but a runaway reaction. Either way, the result is the same. Humanity is becoming psychic. The Imperium is not prepared. The warp is waiting. And the question that lingers, the one no historian, no inquisitor, no psyker can answer, is whether this awakening is salvation or annihilation. Because if the Emperor did intend for humanity to become a psychic race, then the galaxy may soon face a species capable of psychic feats the Eldar once feared. A species shaped by suffering instead of decadence. A species forged through war instead of luxury. But if this evolution is happening too fast, then humanity may be walking directly toward its own catastrophic fall. Either destiny is horrifying, either destiny is powerful, either destiny is irreversible. In the final chapter, we face the ultimate question. Is psychic evolution humanity's greatest blessing, or the curse that finally destroys everything the Imperium has fought to preserve? Chapter 9, Blessing or Curse? The Final Judgment. What if humanity's greatest hope and its greatest doom turn out to be the same thing? That is the terrible truth lurking beneath every psychic awakening, every black ship voyage, every sanctioning ritual, every battlefield where a Psyker screams into the warp and hopes it doesn't scream back. Psykers aren't just anomalies anymore. They aren't rare miracles or isolated dangers. They are the signal of something bigger, something irreversible, something that may decide the fate of mankind in ways no weapon, no army, no emperor's decree ever could. The galaxy stands on the edge of a question humanity is terrified to answer. Are Psykers the key to humanity's future, or the catalyst for humanity's extinction? To reach that answer, we must first accept a reality the Imperium tries desperately to ignore. Psykers are the natural evolution of the human species. They aren't mistakes. They aren't mutations. They aren't deviations that can be purged away. They are the shape of humanity's soul under 10,000 years of pressure, war, fear, and cosmic exposure. Every year brings more Psykers. Every decade brings stronger Psykers. Every century brings events that push mankind closer to a psychic destiny it cannot escape. But destiny does not care whether humanity is ready. The Imperium tries to control this growing tide with fear, regulation, sacrifice, and brutality. These institutions aren't built for enlightenment, they're built for containment. Psykers are sorted, drilled, sanctioned, sacrificed, and deployed, but never truly embraced. They are always one mistake away from execution, one misstep away from condemnation, one moment of panic away from becoming a weapon the Imperium must destroy. Yet the Imperium collapses without them. Psykers light the Astronomicon. Psykers speak across impossible distances. Psykers hold back demonic incursions. Psykers redirect the fates of battles. Psykers sense dangers no machine can detect. Psykers form the backbone of travel, communication, defense, prophecy, and survival. Without Psykers, the Imperium dies. But with Psykers, the Imperium risks becoming a slow-motion suicide. For every sanctioned Psyker, dozens lose control. For every powerful librarian, another spirals into corruption. For every astropath who serves loyally, thousands perish feeding the golden throne. For every Psyker who becomes a hero, another becomes a warning whispered across regiments. This is the paradox the Imperium cannot solve. Humanity cannot live with Psykers. Humanity cannot live without Psykers. Some civilizations resolved this tension naturally. The Eldar became psychic beings with full acceptance. Orcs turned psychic power into instinct. Tyranids forged it into a hive mind. The Tau avoided it entirely. The Necrons rejected it like a disease. But humanity does none of these things. Humanity evolves forward while trying desperately to evolve backward. Fears its own future. Punishes its own potential. It imprisons the very thing that may one day liberate it. The Emperor understood this tension better than anyone. He carried the burden of guiding a species too powerful to be ordinary and too fragile to be extraordinary. He forged a plan to shepherd psychic awakening without allowing it to devour humanity from within. But his plan was shattered. His body is silent on the golden throne. His guidance has become a distant echo. And the galaxy he left behind is spiraling into psychic wildfire. The great rift split the stars. Warp storms rise without warning. Worlds flicker in and out of reality like dying candles. Astropaths scream in unison at unseen terrors. Newborn Psykers awaken in crowded habblocks, screaming as their minds touch something vast and hungry. Even the Space Marines, once considered immune to psychic volatility, now experience unpredictable surges as the warp's tide grows stronger. Some Inquisitors say this is the final phase of humanity's evolution, the beginning of a psychic renaissance, a transformation that will reshape the species into something capable of challenging even the gods of chaos. But others whisper a darker interpretation. What if humanity is not ascending? What if it is fracturing? What if the warp is not awakening mankind, but consuming it from the inside out? What if every Psyker birth is not a sign of hope, but evidence that the boundaries between reality and the warp are eroding? What if psychic evolution is not the Emperor's design, but the universe reacting to a galaxy drowning in fear, despair, and war? These questions have no answer because the Emperor cannot speak. And so humanity is left in the dark, forced to interpret its own destiny while stumbling through a cosmic storm. Psykers are the embodiment of that storm, brilliant, terrifying, unstable, essential. They are both shield and sword, both beacon and warning, both salvation and catastrophe. The Imperium cannot decide whether to revere them or destroy them. And perhaps that confusion is the real danger. Because if humanity is becoming a psychic species, then its survival depends on something far more fragile than strength or strategy or firepower. Its survival depends on discipline, on whether it can master its own mind, on whether it can accept its evolution without surrendering to it, on whether it can stand at the edge of the warp and not fall screaming into its depths. Humanity's future may depend not on conquering the galaxy, but on conquering itself. Because Psykers embody everything the warp feeds on: emotion, fear, hope, ambition, love, rage, despair. And if humanity cannot learn to control these forces within its own soul, then no army, no fortress, no emperor can save it from what waits beyond the veil. The final judgment is this: Psykers are both blessing and curse. They are humanity's greatest gift and its greatest flaw. They are the key to ultimate ascension and the doorway to absolute annihilation. And the future of mankind, its fate, its hope, its downfall may hinge on a single impossible question. Can humanity learn to control its own evolution before the warp tears it apart from within? If it can, the Imperium may one day rise stronger than ever. If it cannot, the galaxy will witness a new fall, and this time there will be no survivors to tell the story.